Good morning and welcome to Behind the Screen. I am JM, and this is a show where we hang out, we talk about games. Most importantly, we talk about beautiful things. Because, as Dostoevsky said, I too believe that beauty will save the world. And so today we're talking about what does that mean in our games? And big thanks to Tink for coming up with the title of this episode. This game would be much prettier if it smiled more. And what do I mean by that? Well, we talk about a lot of different things on the show and on the channel. We're going to talk about alignment on Thursday. We're going to talk about a lot more things philosophically that we're going to be talking about. Tropes as myth next week, which I am really, really looking forward to. And we've talked a lot about death in the game. We've talked a lot about how, in my opinion, if you get to the end of the campaign and you got everything you wanted exactly the way you wanted it and nothing bad happened, that you didn't really have player agency. Agency, for me, is where beauty in games comes from. Now, before we jump into that, good morning to Padre and to John Doom. It is always good to see all of you on here. And yeah, I know Tink is listening, I think, but not available to be in chat. Don't be in chat while you're driving, Tink. So, what do I mean about player agency and beauty? Well, there's a great line from C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity book where it says that if God... Oh, and Night, James, I apologize. You are not chopped liver, and I'm so excited to get to play in the Han Cluster with you on this Friday. So, in Mere Christianity, where C.S. Lewis says that if God thought that it was worth the cost, I'm paraphrasing, to hang this whole universe on the idea of free will, that free will is so important that the risk of damnation to the rest of the universe was equal to the importance of free will, then we have to take that as worth a cost worth paying. I think that's a beautiful quote to talk about what we're talking about today, because a lot of people want to talk about games in a very GM should never kill a character. Player death should never be on the table. Nothing bad should ever happen unless the player consents to it well in advance. I think that's stupid, personally. If I wanted to participate in that sort of storytelling, I would write a novel. I think that part of the joy of games is when things go wrong. I think that in order to have agency, in order to have my choices have real and lasting and true meaning on the game world, there has to be the risk of failure and the risk of death. I agree with you, James. It is absolute BS. I have seen people talk about their big bad evil guy disintegrating someone or using a dragon, and that the players were killed, or some of them were killed, or it was a TPK. And I have seen the internet turn on these people and eat them alive. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Like, personally, I think there used to be, I think there still is, a type of gamer who loves the idea of role-playing games. And through whatever circumstances, maybe it's a dry spot in their life, maybe it's because they can't get, there's no groups around them, whatever, you have kids, you're in a different stage of life, you don't get to play the games that you love. Instead, you get to read about them. And I know this type of gamer exists because I mean, I was that type of gamer. I have had friends who are that type of gamer. I've managed several game stores. I know that this is actually a significant portion of our hobby. People who read the books for enjoyment and have intellectual discussions about the game. Now, we now live in a time where that person plus any sort of internet access gives them unfettered access to the TTRPG space on the internet. They can post, their thoughts and their theories. And we also have a bunch of players who are coming in through actual plays. And actual plays, I think, are great. I'm a huge fan of Critical Role. I'm actually almost done with this episode or this newest season of Vox Machina. But actual plays, they're not quite. Let me rephrase that. Some actual plays are more focused on the entertainment value than they are on the game value of it. And that can lead to a little bit skewed viewpoint on what types of activities and what types of fallout there are for games. And I got to sit on a great panel at GameholeCon where we talked about the video game generation, where people are used to, even in Dark Souls-like games, death is not really even on the table. Yes, Dark Souls screams at you, "You died!" when you die, but while there are consequences, you pick yourself back up and you kind of move forward. And all of these things contribute to what I'm going to call a very Gnostic space online where people intellectually talk about the game, but I don't know that anyone would actually run that at the table. Because no death, nothing bad, no losses. And if you're playing that way and you're having fun, maybe consider that there's another way. I'm not going to come and police your table, just like I would never expect you to come and police mine. Any gaming police that showed up at my house would be very politely but firmly shown the door. But what are we talking about here? Why am I talking about sort of the negative things that happen in games? Going back to that C.S. Lewis quote, that if we think that free will, agency, is worth the price of something disastrous happening in your game, that's a cost worth paying. The darker tones make the bright spots shine even brighter. I think that's something that we need to be reminded of. Gaming is refuge. We talked about that last time. It is an escape from the darkness of our world. But to either assume that our world is completely dark and the gaming world has to be completely bright is a very polarized and false dichotomy. Take it from somebody who had a near-death experience. I got about as close to death's door as you could. That has colored everything that has happened after and has brought so much more joy. I find more joy in the moment because of the trauma that I went through. I hope the Pinkertons don't come after me, James. John says, death is important. Even death that happens in the most mundane situations of combat still matters. It elevates the whole feeling. Yes. And here's the thing. If there is no consequences, then the players at least subconsciously start to pick up on it. And I have no factual basis for this, just 4 decades-ish of gaming and a keen understanding of player psychology, I guess. If players come to feel like their choices don't matter and don't have consequences, then I think the investment in the game drops off rapidly. take Critical Role, for example. In the first campaign, there was a... I'm going to talk around this. There are spoilers for the third season of Vox Machina and the first season of the Critical Role campaign, which came out in, 2017, so that's on you. One of the PCs died, and they basically immediately brought them back because it's Dungeons & Dragons and you can resurrect people. Doesn't mean that the cost isn't there, though, right? The cost to the players, to the characters, to the party funds, especially when you run a game that has a chance of failure at resurrection, like Matt Mercer does. But in the TV show, they are allowing that death to stretch out a little bit. They're allowing it to sit with people. They're allowing it to have some emotional weight. And I think that that adds to the beauty and the joy of that story and that character story. My players talk about this Hydra incident that happened at the table, where the players were fighting a Hydra in 13th Age. They are super heroic. And they fought and they struggled, and our cleric was on point, and she failed and she fell, and then boom, boom, boom. Until only the barbarian was left. And the barbarian was convinced of two things. One, she wouldn't run because she's a barbarian. And two, that Hydra was close enough to death. I think in the end, had she rolled just a little better on that final blow, it wouldn't have been a TPK. I think I shared how many hit points. I think they were within 5 or 7 of killing the Hydra outright. But everyone at the table, all of the dead characters and their players were so focused on the barbarian and cheering for them and saying, no, it's okay, you don't need to run away. We're invested in this moment, even if we all die. And that's a story that they continually joke about and they continually talk about. Tink. Death and sadness gives us catharsis in gaming. Yes, you are absolutely right. It allows us to have this moment of emotional release that we may not get in other spaces. This is why plays were developed. This is why there are epics like the Iliad and the Odyssey. This is why music influences us. This is why a good book or a great movie or the Ride of the Rohirrim affects us because it provides a catharsis. It provides an emotional buildup and then a release. And in the aftermath of that release, yes, you have to process what just happened. But that's where the beauty is allowed to be planted and thrive in our soul. That's why I think no death in gaming is dumb. That's why I think no challenge in gaming is dumb. That's why I think no agency in gaming is dumb. And this is me and those people at my table. They get to suffer, deal with, enjoy the way that I run games. So, if you're a player, dare ask for more agency in your games. Be willing to take the risks. The greater the payoff, the greater the risk. Be willing to lay down your life for your fellow characters. You would be surprised at how many GMs are willing to give you the moon if you're willing to sacrifice your character for it. GMs, don't shy away from this. Resist the urge to fudge a roll, to make something easier, to quantum ogre an encounter. Let your players' choices matter. Let them sit with the consequences, both good and bad, of their choices. And from my own experience, I can almost guarantee that you will see the level of player investment rise as they go, wait, what I did mattered. May have been something awesome, may have been something awful. If it's something awful, from my Vendom game, the infamous Crow Mother scene. One of the characters ended up getting a ton of corruption from their encounter with the Crow Mother, and has, to cleanse it, made a vow to his god to rid all of Vendom of the Crow Mothers. And every time he kills one, some of that corruption is bled away. Now, that wouldn't have happened if that totally dark and evil creature hadn't brutally traumatized that character. Other characters have died in that Vendom game. And those who remain have raised monuments to them. Much like Jedi, I'm watching the chat. Good characters never are truly dead. In my 2E game, which now officially has no more of the original party, they all died or retired. They still call themselves Hal's Heroes after Evan's character, because Evan's character brought so much weight to that group and so much focus. It was a linchpin character. James, I can't wait. Here's to good stories, good actual plays like Knights of the Smith Dinner Table, and to the sad things that happen in our games. Because the sad things end up being the hooks that we hang the tapestry of the game on. And when we're done, we can step back and admire the beautiful thing that we created together. So, that's episode 2 out of probably all of this month's philosophy and gaming episodes. Thanks again to Tink for coming up with a name for this episode that'll grab you. We'll be back on Thursday. We're going to talk about ambiguity versus complexity, and how moral ambiguity doesn't always mean that you have a complex and deep setting. It just means, well, we'll talk about that on Thursday. So, until next time, this is Behind the Screen. I am JM. This has been a iconic production. If you like what I do, if you like what we do, please consider becoming a member either here on Twitch or over on YouTube, or joining our Patreon. We have a ton of great people on the Discord server that you can come and hang out with. I will be posting today and tomorrow on the Savage Worlds play-by-post. I was on vacation, so that has got a little lax. But I hope that you guys are all enjoying this philosophy and gaming series, and I will see you all on Thursday. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. Have a good one, everybody.